I never thought I'd end up here lying on the cold pavement, blood soaking through my shirt, the world slipping away around me. One moment, I was in the middle of a shootout, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. The next, darkness swallowed me whole. I'd spent my whole life running fast, fighting harder, doing whatever it took to survive in the streets, to keep my crew safe, to keep my name feared. Violence was my language, my armor, my escape. But now, as my breath faltered, I felt nothing but a strange calm creeping in, like the silence after a storm. Then, everything changed. I wasn't dead, not really, but I was somewhere else, a place that was both terrifying and surreal. I found myself standing before massive gates, fiery and foreboding, guarded by shadows that seemed to leer at me, eager to drag me inside. I expected anger, judgment, punishment. After all, I'd done things no man should, blood on my hands, lives shattered, a trail of pain behind me. But then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared cloaked in brilliant light, eyes burning with compassion and authority. It was Jesus. Not the man I had heard about in church sermons or whispered stories, but something far greater, an unshakable force of mercy and power. He stepped between me and the gates, and for the first time I felt something I'd never known. Hope. He didn't say much at first, just looked at me with a gaze so deep it pierced through every lie I told myself, every excuse I made for the violence I'd inflicted. His presence silenced the roar of the flames, quieted the voices of accusation. And then he spoke not with condemnation, but with a voice that shook me to my core. "You are not beyond my mercy. Come, I have more for you yet." I was stunned. How could this be? A man like me, with a past so dark, receiving mercy at the gates of hell. I wanted to argue, to run, to hide. But there was nowhere to go. The truth hit me harder than any bullet had. My life, my choices, my pain, none of it was the end. There was still a chance for something I never thought possible: redemption. As I stood there, frozen between the flames of those gates and the overwhelming presence of Jesus, I felt a torrent of emotions surge through me: fear, shame, disbelief. But most of all, an aching hunger for something I couldn't name. The streets had taught me to trust only in power, violence, and survival. Yet here was a power that demanded nothing of me but my brokenness. Jesus looked deep into my eyes, as if reading every wound, every scabbard seen and hidden. "You have carried a heavy burden, one that you believed you had to bear alone," he said softly. "But I tell you now, you were never meant to carry it by yourself. My love is stronger than any sin, greater than any failure." Those words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to push back, to say that I was too far gone, that my crimes were unforgivable. But his gaze held me, steady and unyielding, offering a mercy I had never believed possible. He showed me visions, moments from my life I'd buried deep. Times I'd hurt people, times I'd lost myself in rage, and even moments of kindness I had forgotten. I saw how my violence had not made me stronger, but had imprisoned me in a cycle of pain and hatred. "See what you have done," Jesus said. "Not to condemn, but so you can understand the need for healing. True strength comes not from fighting others, but from surrendering to my love." I trembled, feeling the weight of my sins crush me, yet within that crushing weight there was a strange relief, lifting of something I hadn't realized I'd been carrying, guilt without end. Jesus extended his hand. "Will you come with me? Will you choose life over death, love over hate?" I hesitated. The streets had shaped me. My survival instinct screamed to reject this offer. But the fire behind me, the darkness I was meant to enter, scared me more than anything else ever had. "Come," he urged gently. "There is hope, even for you." In that moment, I made a choice no out of strength, but out of desperate hope. I took his hand, and the flames that had once threatened to consume me began to fade. A peace unlike anything I had ever known filled me, washing away the anger, the fear, the bitterness. For the first time, I felt free. As I gripped his hand, a rush of emotions overwhelmed me: relief, disbelief, and a dawning hope that seemed almost too good to be true. The weight of my past, the bloodshed, the betrayals, the countless nights spent drowning in anger and regret pressed on my chest like a mountain. Yet here was Jesus, offering a lifeline, promising mercy without condition. It was unlike anything I had ever heard or dared to believe. He began to speak again, his voice calm, but filled with a power that seemed to resonate deep within my soul. "You were lost, but now you are found. Your story is not over. There is a path ahead for you, one of healing and purpose. The wounds you carry can be mended, the chains that bind you broken." I wanted to believe, but doubt clawed at me. How could a man like me, with a record soaked in violence, be given a second chance? My mind raced with the faces of those I had hurt, friends turned enemies, families torn apart. Could I ever truly make amends? Jesus saw the turmoil raging inside me and gently said, "Forgiveness begins with accepting it yourself. You cannot change the past, but you can choose what kind of man you become. The mercy I offer is for all who seek it with a humble heart." His words stirred something deep inside, a spark of something I hadn't felt since I was a kid, before the streets hardened me. Hope. The hope that maybe I could be more than the mistakes I'd made, more than the violence that defined me. He showed me visions of a new life, a life where I could break free from the cycle of hatred, where I could be a light in the darkness. I saw facessum familiar, some new people who would need my help, my testimony, my change. "You are called to be a witness," he said, "to share your story so others trapped in the darkness might see the possibility of redemption. Your past will not disqualify you. It will empower you." Tears welled up as I grappled with the enormity of his mercy. I realized that true strength wasn't about surviving by force, but living with courage and love. I had been given a chance to rewrite my story. As the light grew brighter, I felt the presence of peace settling over me, unshakable peace that told me no matter how dark my past, my future could be filled with light. The light that surrounded us was not merely a glow, but a living presence that seemed to breathe life into the deepest recesses of my soul. I was no longer the hardened gang leader, the man defined by the violence and pain of his past. I was a man on the cusp of transformation, standing at the threshold of a new existence, one defined by mercy, hope, and purpose. Jesus spoke again, his voice like a soothing balm. "You have walked a hard road, one filled with pain and brokenness. But I tell you, there is no place too dark for my light to reach. Your past does not define you. Your future is written in the promise of my grace." As he spoke, visions unfolded before me, visions of the damage my life had caused, but also of the potential for healing and restoration. I saw families torn apart by my actions, friends lost to violence, and a community gripped by fear. Yet, amidst the ruins, I also saw seeds of hope, people willing to forgive, lives waiting to be changed, and a future where love could triumph over hatred. "I am calling you not just to forgiveness, but to reconciliation," Jesus said, "to seek healing where there has been hurt, to bring peace where there has been conflict. Your testimony will be a beacon for those trapped in the cycle of violence." The enormity of this calling was overwhelming. I had spent years building walls of anger and defense, Now, I was being asked to tear them down and embrace vulnerability. Yet, I felt a strength unlike any before, a strength born of surrender and faith. Jesus continued, "You will face trials. The path will be difficult. But know this, I will be with you always. When you are weak, I am your strength. When you are afraid, I am your courage." I thought of the streets, the harsh realities, the enemies, the constant struggle for survival. But now, armed with his love and guidance, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. He spoke of forgiveness, not only receiving it, but offering it freely. Forgive those who have wronged you, even those who cannot ask for it. Forgive yourself. In forgiveness, you will find true freedom. Tears streamed down my face as I embraced this truth. The weight of years lifted, replaced by a profound peace. I was no longer a prisoner of my past, but a man set free by grace. As the light began to fade, signaling my return, Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Go forth in my name. Live as a testament to the power of redemption. Your story will inspire others to seek the light." With that blessing, I felt myself returning to my body, forever changed, ready to walk a new path, no longer defined by violence, but by love, hope, and a mission to bring light to the darkest places. The moment of returning to my body was a whirlwind of sensation, sharp pain, the cacophony of the streets, the frantic voices of those around me. Yet, amidst the chaos, an unshakable calm anchored my spirit. The man who had walked the shadows was dying, and a new man was being born, a man, defined not by his past violence, but by the love and mercy he had just encountered. As I slowly regained consciousness, memories of that encounter flooded my mind, the gates of hell, the flames, and the radiant figure of Jesus standing between me and eternal darkness. The weight of that mercy pressed on me with both grace and urgency. I knew I had been given a second chance, not to squander, but to live fully, to make amends, and to bring hope to others trapped as I once was. The first days were filled with struggle. The streets still whispered my name with fear and respect, but I was no longer the man they had known. Inside, I battled doubts, guilt, and the scars of years steeped in violence. The old ways tempted me, offering quick power and control, but the memory of that divine light kept me anchored. I sought out those I had wronged, not to erase the past, but to begin the hard work of healing. Some rejected me outright, unwilling to trust the change they could not see. Others cautiously listened, touched by the sincerity in my words and the transformation evident in my actions. I began sharing my story openly, testifying to the mercy that had saved me, the love that had broken through my hardened heart. My testimony was not perfect, nor was my journey easy, but it was real, a living proof that no one is beyond redemption. I found myself drawn to those still trapped in cycles of violence, addiction, and despair. I became a beacon of hope, a living example that change was possible. Through my efforts, lives began to turn around, communities started to heal, and the light I had found in that other realm began to shine in the darkest corners. Yet, the journey was not without pain. Old enemies still lurked, and the temptation to return to old habits was constant. But I leaned on the strength promised to me in that encounter, the strength that came from love, forgiveness, and faith. Each day was a battle, but also a gift, a chance to live with purpose and to honor the mercy that had spared my soul. I was no longer a slave to my past, but a servant to a higher calling. And through it all, the words of Jesus echoed in my heart, "Go forth in my name. Be a light to those in darkness. Show them the power of redemption and the boundless mercy of God." The days that followed my return were a baptism by fire, a test of the transformation I had undergone. Every step I took was shadowed by the weight of my past, the ghosts of old enemies, and the skepticism of those around me. But beneath the surface, something profound had shifted. The fear that once ruled me was replaced by a deep-seated courage, born from the encounter with a mercy so vast it defied my understanding. I began seeking out those I had hurt not with empty apologies, but with a genuine desire to make amends and to bring healing. The path was rocky. Some doors slammed in my face. Some eyes turned cold with disbelief. But there were others who saw the change, who felt the sincerity in my voice, and slowly the walls between us began to crumble. In quiet moments, I wrestled with the enormity of the mission ahead. The streets still held their grip, the allure of power still whispered promises. Yet, I clung to the promise Jesus had given me. My spirit will be your guide, your strength in weakness, your shield in battle. I poured myself into faith, prayer, and service, finding solace in the scriptures and strength in the community of believers who embraced me not for my past, but for the man I was becoming. Through their support, I learned to forgive myself, to release the bitterness that had festered for years. As I shared my story, I witnessed the transformative power of testimony. Others, lost and broken, began to see a glimmer of hope in my journey, a path out of darkness into light. I became a living testament to God's boundless grace, a bridge between worlds I once thought were irreconcilable. But the road was not without trials. Threats lingered, old habits tempted, and moments of doubt crept in. Yet, each time I recalled the light that had stopped me at the gates of hell, the unyielding love of Jesus that refused to let me go. That love became my armor and my beacon. It fueled my resolve to live boldly, love fiercely, and forgive endlessly. It reminded me daily that redemption was not a destination, but a journey, a continual choice to walk in the light. And so, with every breath, I chose life over death, love over hate, grace over judgment. I was no longer the gang leader who had been shot dead in the streets. I was a man reborn, called to shine a light in the darkest places and to lead others home. As I continued walking this new path, the realities of my past and the promise of my future collided in complex ways. Every day was a test battle between the man I had been and the man I was becoming. The streets I once ruled with fear and force now felt like a different world, one I both belonged to, and yet was called to transcend. I encountered old friends and foes alike. Some welcomed the change, cautiously hopeful, while others viewed me with suspicion or outright hostility. The scars of my former life ran deep, and trust was a fragile, precious thing. I learned quickly that transformation was not just internal but external, a rebuilding of relationships, a healing of wounds inflicted long ago. Jesus' words echoed in my mind during these trials. Love your enemies. Forgive those who persecute you. It was a radical command that challenged every instinct I had honed on the streets. Yet, I knew that to truly live in the light, I had to embody that love and forgiveness, when it hurt. At times, the temptation to return to old ways was fierce. The allure of control, power, and respect tugged at me relentlessly. But the memory of the gates of hell the moment Jesus stopped me was a constant anchor. It reminded me of the darkness I had escaped and the light I was called to carry. I began to use my story as a tool for change, speaking in community centers, prisons, and churches. I shared the raw truth of my past and the radical mercy that saved me. My testimony resonated with many who felt lost or trapped, showing them that no one is beyond redemption. But this role was not without sacrifice. I faced rejection from those who doubted my sincerity, threats from those who feared change, and moments of profound loneliness. Yet, each hardship strengthened my reliance on God's grace and deepened my compassion for others. I learned to pray for strength daily, to seek forgiveness often, and to serve with humility. My life became a living sermon of hope, repentance, and the transformative power of divine love. And in the quiet moments, when doubt whispered lies and fear threatened to overwhelm, I would recall the moment at the gates, the moment when Jesus' mercy broke through the darkness and gave me a second chance. That memory was my lifeline, my proof that even the deepest wounds could be healed, even the darkest past could be redeemed. I was no longer just a gang leader who had been shot dead. I was a man reborn, a witness to grace, and a servant of a love that conquers all. Returning fully to my body was like waking from a nightmare into a second chance at life I never believed I'd be given. The cold air of the street hit my skin, the distant sirens pierced my ears, and the harsh reality of my world pressed back upon me, but inside, I carried a flame that nothing could extinguish. I was no longer the gang leader defined by violence and fear. I was a man transformed by a mercy so vast it defied every expectation I had ever held. The days following my revival were both the hardest and the most hopeful of my life. My body was weak, but my spirit was ablaze with purpose. I began to see the world through new eyesight that longed not for dominance but for peace, not for revenge but for reconciliation. Every step I took was a reminder of the grace that had saved me, urging me to live differently. Facing those I had hurt was a journey filled with pain and courage. Some met me with open arms, others with skepticism or outright rejection. But I understood that healing was not instantaneous. It was a process of patience, humility, and steadfast love. I sought forgiveness not to erase the past, but to build a foundation for a new future. Sharing my story became my mission. I spoke in neighborhoods, prisons, and churches, bearing witness to the transformative power of God's mercy. My testimony was raw, unflinching, a testament to the darkness I had walked through and the light that had found me. For many, it was a beacon of hope, proof that no soul is beyond redemption. Yet, the road was never easy. Threats lingered, old habits tempted, and moments of despair crept in. But I clung to the promise that Jesus' love would sustain me. Prayer became my refuge. Community became my strength. With every challenge, I learned to lean deeper into grace. Forgiveness became the cornerstone of my new life, not just forgiving others, but forgiving myself for the pain and destruction I had caused. It was a liberation I had never imagined possible. Through it all, I grew into a man who walked not in fear but in faith, not in anger but in love. The gang leader who was shot dead had died that night, not just physically, but spiritually. What lived on was a man reborn, called to shine light into the darkest corners of the world. And as I walk this path, I carry this truth with me always. No matter how deep the darkness, no matter how far lost a soul, the mercy of Jesus Christ is greater still. It is a love that saves, heals, and transforms, and it is the power that changed me forever.